So today we're going to be taking a look at doing a physical inventory with QuickBooks Point of Sale. We want to look at where you start. Ideally, what you're going to start is you're going to start by backing up your QuickBooks Point of Sale software. Once you get your software backed up, then you have to determine whether you're a single store or a multi-store operation. If you're a multi-store operation, you want to be sure that you run a couple of store exchanges between your headquarters and your remote stores. You want to send from the remote store, you want to receive at the headquarters, send back to the remote store, receive at the remote store, send back to headquarters, process in at the headquarters, send back to the remote, process in at the remote, send back to the headquarters, process in, and send back to the remote. So you want to do a full 3 cycles of store exchange. The purpose of that is to ensure that all of your inventories are in sync, so that the headquarters and the remote store have the exact same quantity on every item. Because when you do a physical inventory and you count 2 widgets, it doesn't send 2 widgets up to headquarters. It sends up to headquarters what the difference is between what it thought you have and what you actually counted. So if you counted 2 widgets, the system thought you should have had 3, it's going to send a -1 up to headquarters. If headquarters doesn't also have 2, and it does a -1, now you both have 2 different inventory numbers, and when they send back to you, it's going to mess up your inventory, and your freshly counted inventory is going to be all out of sync. So it's really important to do those store exchanges prior to beginning your inventory, so that you get everything completely in sync, so that you don't have any issues. All right. There are 2 basic ways that you can do a physical inventory. One is using a barcode scanner, an inventory scanner. The other is using a manual count. If you have a physical inventory scanner, you're going to want to be sure to test it ahead of time. Make sure it's making a connection with your point of sale, that you can scan a couple of items and upload those items into your inventory smoothly without any issues. Ideally, when you're going to be doing a physical inventory, you're going to give us a call ahead of time to let us know you plan to do a physical inventory and schedule a physical inventory training where we will call you up, we'll connect with you, and we will actually run a test with you, making sure that you understand everything. If you're using a scanner, making sure that your scanner is connecting properly and that you know how to operate it. Next thing you want to do is you're going to want to divide your store up into zones. Zones are small areas of the store that you can scan in anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. You want a smaller scanning area for a couple of reasons. One, if you have any issues when you're doing that scan in that area, and for some weird reason, when you try to upload it, you don't get anything at all, you only want to have to redo 10 to 20 minutes worth of work. You don't want to have to do several hours work again because you scanned the entire store. So that's one reason to divide your store into small zones and do them in zones. The other reason is when you are using a scanner and you're uploading the data into the point of sale, into your inventory, you may get an error that occurs. That error or unrecognized scan will show up on one tab of the screen when you're reading in the inventory. And on that screen, it's going to show you what you scanned before and after the unrecognized scan. That way you can run back to that area, find the 2 good items, and know that the bad one is the thing that's in between them. If you're scanning a small area, it'll be fairly easy to locate that item. If you're scanning the whole store, it could be a bit more difficult to locate that item. Another reason for laying out zones and keeping things fairly small and compact when you're doing your physical inventory. If you incur any bad scans when you're doing your physical inventory, the ideal thing to do is go to find that item, pull that item from where it was, set it aside on a fix-it table, and then at the end, when you're done scanning everything, go back to that fix-it table, try to rescan the items that you put on that fix-it table, and then you can, if they scan good, great. If they don't scan, then you want to print new tags for those items so that when they come to the register, you know they're going to scan correctly. And once you've got new tags and you rescan them, you should be able to input all of those into your inventory. All right. The other way you can do a physical inventory is a manual count. With a manual count, you're going to be opening up your inventory. You're going to ideally print out a list of all of your items that you can then take around and verify that you've counted everything you should be counting. In just 1 second here, I will show you how that works. I didn't get my point of sale open, and so I'm waiting on it to open up on us. All right, I have my point of sale open now. I'm sorry about that delay there. So I've got my point of sale up and running. On my point of sale, we're going to go to inventory. We're going to go to start physical. That will start a physical inventory. On our physical inventory, if you got a bunch of columns over here which are meaningless to you, you can clean those up. You can do that by right-clicking on one of the column headers, choosing Customize Columns, and then removing the items which you have no use for when you're actually doing that physical inventory. So you can clean those up. You can also make little changes, like instead of department code, I would rather see my department name. And so I can add the department name. I can remove the department code. I can remove the vendor code and actually go find the vendor and add the vendor name. And then when I do a save, I'm going to have a lot less junk cluttering up my screen when I'm trying to see stuff that I have in my inventory. If you find that you still need additional columns, you can right-click, customize your columns, and you can add something that you think would make it easier to do your inventory. So I'm going to add item description. I'm going to move it up after my item name. And now I've got the item description as well as my item name. You can see in here you've got the item number, we've got an item name, we've got an item description, we've got size and attribute, we have expected quantity, we have a yellow column for counted quantity, we have a difference which shows us the difference between our expected and our counted amount. We have an alternate lookup, which you can leave or not leave, depends on if you use alternate lookup. We can have the department, and the vendor name. You can resort this list by any of those columns that make sense to you and how your store is laid out and how you want to proceed with doing your inventory. So I'm going to resort by department. That's going to resort by department name. If I'm doing a inventory with the scanner, it doesn't matter as much because it's going to find where things need to go. But if I'm doing an inventory manually, then I'm going to want to come here to I want to. I'm going to go to run a report. I will run a PI worksheet. That's going to create a worksheet listing all of my items. And I get all of my items. I can resort this just like I did my list in my counts by department. I could also modify it, and I could add to it my item description. To make things a little easier on me to know what the items are, or someone who's not quite familiar with the item name, what the items are. It will rerun the count sheet, and now I've got my item description as well. Again, like I did in my count sheet, I can right-click up here on the header, choose Adjust Column Width, and it will adjust my columns to the widest thing in that column. You can then print this sheet out. You can take it around. You can run down and write down how many items you have of each item. Once you have completed that, you are ready to enter those counts into your count sheet. You have two choices on how you're going to enter the counts. Since you're sorted in the same order that your count sheet is, theoretically, you can just run down the sheet and enter the right quantities. So you can come over here to the counted column. You can click in there, and you can type how many of those items that you have. If you don't find an item, you can either type in a 0, or you can just leave it blank. And so you run down and enter your counts. You can also enter your counts on a hand count sheet. For that, you would go up here to I want to, add counts by hand. That will bring up the hand count sheet. Where it says enter items, you're going to enter an item number. You will tell it how many you have. You can type in a number, or if you only have one, you can just press enter. That's going to add that to the item list. You can then add in the next item that is on your count sheet, and you can continue down the list adding item counts. When you get all of your items added, you can tell it to save, and that will add those counts to your count sheet. If when you add the counts, something shows up in the difference column, that tells you that you counted a different amount than what it expected. If you don't enter anything, then there's no difference because you didn't count anything. So if I enter a 1 in this one, I've now got a -1 and a +1. You can see down in the lower right-hand corner, it tells me how many items I found more than I was expecting, how many items I found less than I was expecting. It tells me the retail of both the more and less than, and it tells me the cost of more than less than, and the net difference between what I found more of and what I found less of. It does the same thing if you're using the inventory scanner. If you're using the inventory scanner, when I went up here to I want to, instead of going to add counts by hand, you would go to add counts from scanner. If I had a scanner connected to my computer, that would be available as a choice. You would click on that, and it would come up and tell you to enter your counts from your scanner. It would tell you to make sure that your scanner is in the cradle. It would tell you to make sure that it's on the appropriate screen. And it depends on what scanner you're using on what that screen would be. It's either going to tell you to be on the home screen, or it's going to tell you to be on an upload screen, depending on which scanner type it is. You will then say next, and it will proceed to go out, access the scanner through the cradle, and upload those numbers into your physical inventory. All right. When you are entering them with the inventory scanner, and you've looked at the unexpected scans or the unrecognized scans, and you click on the Scans tab, which shows you what you scanned, you want to be sure at the bottom of that Scans tab, there's an option to select all. You want to be sure to select all, and then you want to be sure to click Save Selected. That will save all of the items that you just told it to select to your count sheet. If you don't do that, then it will not save anything to the count sheet. Once you have done that with your scanner, you're also going to want to clear out the counts in your scanner so that you can then proceed to counting the next zone. And it's really important that you clear the scans out of your scanner before you scan the next zone. Otherwise, you're going to double up on what you previously counted, because it will re-enter those same numbers back into your inventory quantities. Any questions on that? No? All right. So, as you go through and count, periodically, you're going to want to come down here and hit Save and Continue. That saves all the information you've entered in the counted column. If you need to take a break from inventory, you can Save and Continue. You can even close out of your inventory. Do whatever you need to do. You can come up here to File, and you can even do a backup and save your data. Especially if you're not going to be continuing your inventory for a little while. Maybe you're going to take a break for the evening, come back and finish it tomorrow. It's a good idea to do a backup before you leave completely. You can exit out of point of sale. When you come back into point of sale, go back up to inventory, go back to start physical. It's going to take you back and put you right back where you left off. All of the counts you entered are still going to be in there. So you can continue to count your information. Very last step, when you think you have counted everything there is to count, is you probably want to check this Set All Items Not Counted to 0 if you're doing a full store inventory, only if you're doing a full store inventory. When you do that, it is going to put zeros on everything you have not counted. If that item is negative, it's going to put a 0 to zero it out. If you didn't find the item, it'll put a 0 and zero it out. I think I missed a couple of items. I'm going to uncheck that, which will get rid of my zeros again for a minute, because I want to go up here, and what you would do after you do that, you come up here to I want to run a report and do a differences report. The differences report is going to show you anything you counted that you counted a different quantity than what the system was expecting. And it tells you how far you were different. It's not a bad idea to pick out some of those items and go spot check them and make sure that indeed what you counted is what you have. That you didn't miss something, or you didn't count more than what you thought, or you didn't count something of item A when it actually should have been an item B. So it's a good idea to spot check those things when you have differences in what you expected to count. If you don't have a lot of time to check differences, I would start with checking the most expensive items and verify that those indeed are correct. Right. Once you're happy with that, you can print that report. You can send it to Excel if it's a long report and you don't want to waste that much paper. But that way you've got a track of exactly where your discrepancies occurred. You can close out of that. That'll put you back in the inventory. I would again do a save and continue, close out, go back up to file, back up your data, then return to your physical inventory, and I would uncheck and recheck the set items not counted as zero, just to ensure that the zeros are present. Because you can come into physical inventory, that checkbox can be checked, but the zeros aren't present. So it's always a good idea to uncheck and recheck it when you're doing a full physical inventory, just to make sure the zeros are actually applied to your inventory counts. So you've counted everything, you've checked your discrepancy list, you've unchecked and rechecked the set all items not counted as zero. You're ready to finish your inventory by applying changes. When you apply changes to inventory, whatever you have as a count is going to become your new counts for those items. So I took off my set all items not counted as zero because I don't want to zero out most of my inventory. So I'm going to do apply changes, and it's going to put whatever I have for these counts as my new counts for those items. It says when you're updating your inventory, it is going to adjust your count, and it's going to create a quantity adjustment memo. I'll say yes. It will generate those adjustment memos for anything that had a discrepancy on it. I can run the differences report. I can run a PI detail report. Either one. I'll choose the detail report because we didn't look at one of those. If I run that report, and my computer's in a nice mood, it will show me that report, and it shows me what I counted and what was expected and any differences, as well as the cost or price differences for each item. And my total cost and price difference, my total expected items, my total counted items, my total differences. If you run that report from within your physical inventory module and choose to run it here, you can then send that report to Excel, just like I said you could with the differences report. So that created some quantity adjustment memos. So if I look at my quantity adjustment memos, and I look at a quantity detail, I can see here's the memo I just created. I can click on the plus, and I can see exactly what items were listed on that memo and what the difference was. I can also tweak this report a little bit by going up to modify. I can add or remove columns. and I could add a value change, and I can save it and run it, and that will show me what the difference is in my inventory due to my physical inventory. All right. Any questions? I don't hear any questions. So, if no one has anything, that is all I have for you. That's doing a physical inventory. The hardest part when you're doing the physical inventory is if you're using the inventory scanner and getting it connected to the computer so it talks to your point of sale. Once you get that set up, it's fairly simple. With one little minor glitch that occasionally, especially depending on which physical inventory scanner you're using, it might be picky on exactly how it's setting in its cradle. And if you don't have it in the cradle just right, you'll get an error that it couldn't read the scans. You simply do it back, take it out of the cradle, put it back in the cradle, and try again. And usually after a couple of tries, it'll read the scans and away you go. All right. So if no one has any other questions, that's doing a physical. And again, we highly recommend that before you actually get ready to do your own physical, that you give us a call, set up an appointment, so that one of the techs or trainers can walk through doing the physical with you and your data so that you actually see it working on your computer. So, I still don't hear any questions, so we will say thank you for attending today. This webinar will be put up on our YouTube page so that it can be reviewed at a later date. And they will send you out a notice letting you know where you can find that upload. So everybody have a great one, and I will talk to you later.
That's 30 minutes. We'll never get back of our life. Basically what I learned.